just like that, we are here in Melbourne. Welcome to part 2 of the Melbourne Marathon Race Series. We are here, yes! It is Marathon Eve, and at the time of recording this video, at about 4 p.m, I have finished my last shakeout run. It was an awesome park run this morning at the Albert Park Run with the TSRC crew. Big up Tony Smith Running Club for hooking me up with a singlet for the big day, as well as the help with the coaching, of course. But yeah, amazing park run. There was something like 600 people there this morning, so a really cool event. So yeah, the shakeout is done, the last session is in the bag, and the race bib number has also been collected. I'm not sure if it's a lucky one. I guess we're gonna find out tomorrow. But boy, am I loving Melbourne. What a place. We've been here about 24 hours now, and oh man, it's so nice here. So grateful to be here at such a sunny time of the year. It seems bizarre for the sun to be out in October, but apparently that's what happens here. And on to my favourite part of Marathon Eve, which is, of course, the flat lay. For this time around, as you guys know, I will be rocking the Nike Alphafly 2s, fueling with Morton. I've got a few gel 100s and a caffeine gel to try at the end, see if that can spur me on for the last few K. I've got some electrolytes to take in the morning before we head out. Got the tried and tested Tiger Balm just to get things loosened up in the morning, but also if I find any aches while I'm using the massage gun tonight, this will be going on. I've also got my granola slice, vegan of course, along with the banana for the morning. That is my breakfast. Nothing wild this time around. I'm not going to risk it with the stomach, just nice and easy foods. I've got my Say Sky Combat half tights, really nice and lightweight, and they've also just got great pockets on both legs, I guess. Yeah, both legs. And then of course I've got my Tony Smith Running Club singlet with the number attached. It looks so damn good. Thank you again, Tony. But with all that being said, I guess there's not many stones left to turn. It's really getting close now, and honestly, I am confident that I'll be going sub 3 tomorrow. I've got a slight feeling, a slight buzz that we might be going nearer to 2:55 than the 3 hour mark. So, I don't know. Maybe that's just a small intuition, maybe that's the spidey sense tingling, but I think we might have it this time around. I guess we'll find out tomorrow, guys.
Later.
3, 2, 1, good luck, Melbourne!
Come on! Did it! We did it! Yeah! Come on! That's it, friends. That's right. We bloody did it. Oh my days. I know I said in the intro that this was a victory lap. This was just an opportunity to find gratitude for the 3 marathons I've ran this year in the last 6 months. It was a chance to obviously catch up with friends on that start line, to meet some new friends out there, but just to enjoy the streets of Melbourne. But I've got to say, Melbourne absolutely delivered. And before we get started, I've just got to thank my team over at the Tony Smith Running Club for the motivation, the words of wisdom and the support throughout the entire weekend, from the Saturday morning park run around Albert Park with the guys all the way to the finish line at the end. Those guys were there for me, so thank you all so much at TSRC. Couldn't have done it without you guys. But man, I don't know where to start. Leaving you guys on Saturday night on Marathon Eve, I wasn't ready for what was about to unfold. The following morning, that Sunday morning, 5:30 wake up call in Melbourne. Oh man, if I had known what was about to come, there's no way I would have slept Saturday night on that Marathon Eve, because I got a solid 8 hours in the bank. Woke up bright and early, got the fuel on, everything sat nicely, and as my partner Courtney and I headed down to the start line, which is just about a 10-minute walk away from where we were staying, I just couldn't believe the sheer amount of people walking down to the start line. It was incredible, and it was only when we, you know, probably got about 200 or 300 meters from the start line did the emotions start to hit me. That morning, of course, I woke up with a feeling of nerves for sure, but mostly of excitement. And man, this was just elevated as soon as I saw, you know, this many people on the start line. There was already music playing and it was night time, but just after that walk down, my knees were buckling, honestly. And of course I had the I guess crazy orange shoes on, to put it lightly. But yeah, my knees were buckling, my shoes were wobbling, and yeah, I was just absolutely just beside myself, really. But I knew in that moment that the best thing that I could do, and you know, really the only way to live the moment was just to be present, to take a deep breath, and to really just take on board what was about to unfold. So with about half an hour to start, till start, I took the opportunity to go and hunt down some nearby toilets. I felt like, you know, I could do with maybe removing a little excess baggage that I was carrying by ways of my breakfast and dinner the night before. But unfortunately, the queues for the toilet were just too damn big, and there was no way that I was going to be able to get in there and start the race in a place that I was happy in. So I thought, you know what, I know I've had GI issues in the past, I've had an upset stomach during races, but on this occasion I think I'd prefer to be in an ideal starting place and deal with that later on. I'm going to have to just pause my recap here because there's a ball that I really need to throw down below. There on that start line, I got my strides in, I got a nice little warm-up in, despite the thousands of people packed in to that starting pen with, yeah, literally like 20 minutes to go at this point. So I was sort of lingering around the starting pen, trying to get a gauge of what sort of pace groups there were around me, what kind of paces people were running, and I asked a few people. The first person I asked was actually going for a 4:30 marathon, so I realised that I was way far back in the starting pen than I needed to be, so I started working my way forward. I asked another chap, he was going for a 4-hour marathon, so yeah, I needed to work my way forward, but it was difficult to gauge in these early stages just how far forward I'd need to be. Continued working my way forward until I was sort of eye line with the 3-hour pacer. I was still maybe 10 to 15 people behind that pacer, but I thought this is a good place to start. So on that start line, I really can't explain the emotion that was just, I guess, radiating throughout the crowds of people. There were parachutes, hot air balloons flying overhead. I'd be worried if there was parachutes. Hot air balloons flying overhead, and there was music playing, and my breath was taken. It was at that moment a chap next to me turned to me, shook my hand. He turned to the next man, shook their hand. It was just absolutely brilliant. It was a beautiful time, and you know, we were all there for different reasons. Some people for charity, some people like myself there just for the sheer fun of it. And yeah, it was a very special moment. And it wasn't long after this that the gun went off, and I found myself, you know, trying to be present, trying to be focused, completely just taken by surprise by the starting gun. So started off in the first, you know, really first few meters of the marathon, and my breath was absolutely taken, and I wasn't ready to run. I'm not sure if it had been too long since my warm-up or what, but I just didn't feel ready. And this actually lasted for the whole first K. I was just absolutely beside myself with emotion, excitement, you know, seeing the sheer amount of people at the start in silence, just taking in the music, taking in the experience, did actually take my breath away, and I was short of breath for the whole first kilometre, which I ran in 4:19, so just off of marathon pace. But I was absolutely just dodging and weaving people that were just running at all different paces all over the place in front of me and to the side of me. And I hope there was no early falls, but I was almost just caught up with so many people that were just like lunging around, bumping into each other. Yeah, as I say, I hope everyone got out of that safely, but it was treacherous in those early stages. So after that first K, that 4:19 that I ran, I put the hammer down, and I found a few slightly unconventional overtakes, which meant that I took quite a long path around the track. But my second kilometre came in quite quickly. I believe I ran a 4:04 kilometre, so slightly ahead of pace. I could feel that my legs were putting in a little bit too much effort in the early stages, so I just wound it back. And the early few kilometres went by so quickly. I honestly couldn't believe how quickly they were ticking by on my watch, and they were getting more into the rhythm that I needed to be around the 4:10 mark in the early stages anyway. And it was about 6 or 7 kilometres in, as I was approaching the window when I'll take my first gel. I planned in this marathon to take gels on it every 7 kilometres. It was around this time that something happened that I absolutely wasn't expecting during this race. And that was that mentally I absolutely hit a wall. And it was insane really, because I was less than half an hour into this event and I just didn't have it mentally. In that moment, said to myself, just finish, just, you know, enjoy this. Don't worry about the time. You don't have to try it. You know, don't go over 70% today. Just enjoy it. Don't do anything that you don't have to. And of course, I was right. Deep down, I didn't have to do anything. I was there on my own accord. I was there just to have fun. And as I say, just taking the experience with those around me. And to celebrate what an amazing year of running it's been. Retrospectively, I think in that moment I woke up a bit of me that maybe just felt a bit lazy on the day, maybe felt a little bit lethargic, and maybe just sensed a little bit of the doom that was coming my way. And of course I didn't listen to this voice in the moment because I was hungry. I still had about 35 kilometers to go in this race, and you know, as I looked down at my bright shoes and my race number on my chest, I told myself, you know what, you know, I haven't come all the way to Melbourne not to give this a good shot, not to, you know, give myself an experience that I'm proud of, which meant putting in everything I wanted to give on the day, and I knew I had a lot to give. Fitness wise, mentally, but I guess my spirit wanted it as well. Deep down in my soul, I wanted to push the limits. And after watching Kipchoge break the world record just a week earlier, I couldn't help but think back to how he must have felt in Berlin, just stepping into uncharted territory where no man's ever been before. And yeah, I absolutely put the hammer down, to say the least. And I put the hammer down the next few K until I caught up with my good friend DK. DK, some of you guys might remember I mentioned from the Adelaide Marathon video. He was a chap that I met out on course, and he spurred me on, and I too hope I spurred him on throughout that race. DK, if you're watching, thanks again for the support, buddy, because running the next few Ks with DK around the Albert Park Grand Prix circuit was truly a special experience. I didn't look down at my watch once while I was with DK. We just ran together, and I think we knocked off 3 consecutive 4:16 kilometers, which was just beautiful. It was so nice. We were in sync, catching up, chatting away, and yeah, it was a truly special moment to spend, you know, time with a friend just to catch up, and you know, it was what I needed in that moment. So at this point, I said to DK, I'm hungry for this. I'm gonna go get it. And we went our separate ways. DK held back, keeping his energy, you know, under maintenance. Maybe I should have done the same, I don't know, but I went off. I was hungry. The whole time I wasn't catching the 3-hour pace group. I was running fast at this point, and I was surprised that I hadn't caught them, but I said to myself, it's best to be patient. I will catch them eventually throughout this whole thing. Obviously the goal at this point is to still run under 3 hours. I'm still hoping for that PB, despite the lack of motivation I felt creep over me 7K into this thing. But approaching, I don't know, 14 or 15K, I've left DK, and I'm carrying on with my race strategy to run a negative split, and I've taken on my second gel around the 14.5K mark. And it was here that I ran into a big hurdle, a hurdle that I've never had before, and regular viewers of Scott Free Running will know that I'm all about finding new experiences to learn from. I'm in many ways open to adversity. I really do hope that me learning from my experiences, me diving into the unknown, can help you all avoid the same mistakes that I've had, and thus help us all grow forward and, you know, grow stronger together. it was here I experienced something that I've never experienced while I'm running, and that is belly cramps. Quite frankly, pain radiating from side to side of my belly, just sharp, just awful pains. And yeah, I don't know what it was. Still now, I have no idea. It might have been that my breakfast just upset me a little bit. A vegan granola bar and a banana. I'm not sure what it was about it, but something must have not sat right, because I was struggling, and this persisted really for the next 15k, and it was horrible. What was especially strange about this pain was it made me feel like I really needed to use the bathroom. Made me feel like I needed to stop and really empty out my insides. And viewers of the channel will know that in Adelaide I did exactly this, and that's exactly what I needed to do on that day. But here in Melbourne, I felt there's something just a little bit different about this. I think I can stick it out, and looking back at my splits, it's quite strange because there's no real indication that anything was amiss. Even though I was hurting, I was still able to run. And I knew this as I was clicking by on the Ks. Actually, this isn't affecting my performance too much. It's just a bit painful. So I stuck with it, and I'm so pleased to say that the stomach cramps completely just went at 30k. But it still lasted a long time. And as I came through halfway in 1:29, which is just slightly slower than I hoped, but I knew that this was a conservative, sustainable effort that I was putting in. It was when I came through halfway that I thought, I'm working a little bit too hard, you know, fighting this pain than I'd like to. But ultimately, you know, I was willing to stick with it. And I can't generalize and say that all pains will go away during a marathon, but I will say, for any of you out there that have never run one and that are hoping to run one, if you do just have a little bit of a ache or a pain as you're going, stick with it, because chances are it will go. At least in my experience, these things do. So went through halfway, 1:29, and this was a beautiful piece of the track. I really enjoyed running down St Kilda Beach, I believe it was. Might be wrong, but running down St Kilda Beach, I absolutely was just, yeah, taking in the sights, the surroundings, the crowd support. That, you know, even 25k into this thing, there hadn't been a single opportunity for, you know, me to process my own thoughts, because so many people had been shouting. There was just a rhythmic quality to the group of runners that I was with. We were still almost shoulder to shoulder, running at a similar pace, clicking off the Ks around the 4:10 mark. So I was absolutely over the moon, still smiling, and even with those stomach cramps, even just slightly before the pains and the cramps ended, I was still, you know, really over the moon with how the experience was going. So moving into the later portion of the race, I bumped into a chap that I'd been running with for a lot of the event, and I struck up a conversation with the chap and found out his name was Pete, and he was also from the UK. So it was quite nice to share a few words of wisdom with Pete. And Pete, if you're watching, thanks so much for the support and for, you know, helping me go through that, because it was around here that myself, Pete, and the rest of the marathon runners were introduced into a funnel that then funneled out into a group of marathon and half marathon runners running together on the same street, but at completely different paces, which kind of seemed, I don't know, strange in the grand scheme of things. I don't know why the event organisers did this, but it made for an interesting time of weaving, and Pete and I, weaving together, somehow were able to navigate through the crowds. And looking at both mine and Pete's splits from this time in the race, it seemed not to affect us too much, pace-wise anyway, but there's definitely a little bit more effort going on here, weaving. So I couldn't believe, after all the stomach cramps and the early doubt I was having with how good my bowels were prepared for this, I was surprised how good I was feeling 32k into this race. And I will say, I think it was the Morton gels. I think taking on board, I was taking on board 4 Morton gels at this point. I'd hydrated with regular water stations, almost every one, and I was feeling great. I had loads of energy. My mind was probably the sharpest it was the whole time. I was motivated to push, and I felt strong. I really did. With 10k to go, which in a marathon I think is a pretty rare thing. So I will say that the day, probably in all, is my, I guess, strongest marathon effort to date. It was just, yeah, I felt strong, and I knew with 10k to go, there's a good time in the bag here for me. So it was around here, I was working together with Pete, that I just took it upon myself to just go for it. Around 35k, things got tough. Of course, this far into a marathon with 7k to go, there was a little bit of surging going on my part. I was just trying to get rhythm, just moving forward a bit quicker. But you know, really, I noticed at about 37k that the course was getting flatter. There might have been a bit of relief coming in way of a few downhills, but really this wasn't going to get any easier. So it was best to just lock in the rhythm, keep an eye out for that 3-hour pace group, who I found at 38k. And seeing these guys was such a welcome relief, because I knew that I'd started about 20 seconds behind them on the starting line, which meant that I had about 20 seconds on them as we approached the finish. Basically meaning that if they were hoping to cross the line in, say, 2:59.30, I'd be crossing the line in 2:59.10, because I started 20 seconds behind them. So yeah, this brought so much relief, and I worked with the guys to bring it home, and they were great. They cheered me on through the end, and I had a few of my own shouts coming into the stadium just to cheer myself on. Come on Scott, let's get it. Looking back, you know, I don't regret it. I hoped it G'd on a few people around me, and it really helped me actually. You know, almost as a mantra, just to keep myself going, keep myself pushing. And as I approached the MCG stadium, the Melbourne cricket ground, which was an amazing spectacle at this moment on in the race. Like, I think it was 41.8k in. I had about 500 meters to go on my watch. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Just grandstands full of people shouting. And as I entered the MCG, I felt a burst of energy. And I looked up and I saw two finishing arches, one for the half marathon, one for the full. I saw that, and I absolutely sprinted for it. I put my head down and I went for it. Quicker than I've ever run before, it felt like in that moment. Probably wasn't, but flew towards the finish line, got through the line, realised it wasn't the finishing line at all, it was just a separating funnel, and I actually had about 200 metres left to run around the stadium, and I was absolutely just gone. I had nothing left. And I looked to my right, and there was a chap who was probably about my dad's age, about 30 years my senior, and he gritted his teeth and he ran next to me, and I looked at him and I thought, I want to race you to the finish. And me and him put our heads down and we went for it. I just expelled loads of energy. I couldn't keep up with him, but I was so happy to come over the line, look up and see the early stages of the 2:59s, which I know I had about 20 seconds in the bag on. So I crossed the line and I stopped my watch, and unbelievably, for the first time in my marathon running career, I saw a 2:58. And I was over the moon. I couldn't believe it. I'd done it, not only beaten my PB and got actually officially under 3 hours, but I had got into the 58s, and my official time of finishing was a 2:58, 56 seconds. So it was absolutely over the moon. And I can only look back retrospectively and see on my number that the difference between 5 and 3 is 2, and the difference between 3 and 8 is 5, and there's an 8 on my bib. So 2:58 is right there, it's set in stone. It was ready for me as soon as I picked up my race number on Saturday morning. I was coming for that 2:58 and I got it, and I was rewarded, and I crossed that finish line after seeing my time on my watch, seeing the time above me, and I absolutely just burst into tears, and my legs went, and I was laying on the ground, or sitting I should say. It felt like a lay in that moment, the amount of relief I had from being just, you know, not supported my own weight. I looked down at my shoes and I just had tears streaming down my face. And I've spoken about emotion at the end of marathons before. At the end of Brighton, especially the last few Ks, I was sobbing, but this time around at Melbourne, I was absolutely just caught. I was just, you know, a victim of this wave of emotion that had taken over me, and it absolutely just engulfed me. And I was helped up by Marshall. I'd stopped a little bit too close to the finish line for his liking, and for my safety he picked me up and he put an arm around me and he said, well done. And this of course brought more tears on. It was an absolutely beautiful moment, and I will cherish and remember that forever. It was shortly after that I saw a few guys from my team, including my coach Tony, Seeing the guys just made me cry even more, and of course we hugged, we handshakes, and oh, it was a beautiful moment. There was congratulations all round, and yeah, a massive well done and thank you to the guys in the team. You all smashed it. Shortly after, I was given my Melbourne Marathon Finishers Medal right there. I've got it here to prove it. I won't be taking it off for the whole month of October. Had a Gatorade, I had a banana, and I felt absolutely I came out the stadium. I soon after saw DK, congratulated him. Well done again, buddy. Saw a few guys that I met out on the course, and yeah, saw Courtney, which was an absolutely just, oh, I needed that hug that I got from her, because I put so much out there. I'd left so much out on those roads, and it was only retrospectively that I could really appreciate that, as you know, I was basically unable to walk or hold up my own weight in the hour or so after finishing the marathon. And as we went for dinner after, it was just such a beautiful experience. You know, just to be congratulated on the day as I wore my medals, just strangers saying well done. And it was only really since flying back to Adelaide last night and getting a good night's rest that I can honestly say right now that that is my favourite running experience I've ever had to date. I am so thankful, so incredibly thankful for how welcome everyone made me feel in Melbourne, the team, the club that support me. Thank you guys so much. And the spectators out on those streets in Melbourne, man, you can't beat it. Honestly, if any of you are watching this and you have the opportunity to ever run the Melbourne Marathon, please do, because that was an amazing experience, and I can't wait to do it again next year. I hope that I'm in a place where I'm able to do it, because that is something that I'd love to relive over and over. That was absolutely tremendous. What a special experience. But as always, guys, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you have any questions about my experience, please drop them down below. I love talking about marathons, I really do, and to share this recap with you guys, yeah, it's brought me so much joy. I've got a real smile on my face, and I will have that smile as I edit this video and publish it later on today. But thank you all so much for watching, if you made it this far into the video. As always, find gratitude, find peace. You best damn well believe I won't be taking this medal off. I'll see you all very soon when I can walk again. Come on!